Hi. Hi, how's it going? My name's Matt, and it's not going to surprise anyone when I say that Tenet's an extremely complex film. It makes every other Christopher Nolan film look like the most straightforward thing you've ever seen in your life. It makes Inception look like Transformers.
It's a robot. It's probably Japanese.
Okay, maybe not that drastic, but you know what I mean. Like, let's be real, Inception held the title of film that made your head hurt for a good 10 years, but even that seems simple compared to Tenet's storyline. It's causing confusion all over the world, so much confusion that the internet's basically turned into a Tenet explained forum, and we're going to add to that now, because as helpful as all the videos trying to explain it are, there are still things that are confusing people. I've seen the film twice, I've connected all the dots, I followed every timeline so we can set things straight once and for all. If you've not seen the film, and you don't want it completely ruined for you, this is your one and only spoiler warning. And with that over the top bit done, let's get into it. Here are 5 things people misunderstood about Tenet. Number 1. And I'm sorry to crush the fan theory, but Neil is not Kat's son. This is one of the most talked about theories in the world right now, and I love the thinking behind it. Basic premise is that Kat and Sator's son Max grows up to be Neil. There's some compelling evidence for it as well, because Max is short for Maximilian, and what do you get if you invert the last 4 letters of Maximilian? Yeah, you get Neil, which works for the film's palindrome theme, and it could also explain how Neil can speak Estonian, because Max's dad, Sator, can also speak Estonian. I would love this to be true, but I know why it's not. For starters, the ages of Max and Neil in the film just don't add up, and Neil himself explains where he's from at the end of the film. He actually says to the protagonist, "You have a future in the past," which means the protagonist doesn't know Neil from the future at all. He inverts at some point after the events of the film, travels back through time and meets Neil before the events of the film, which is presumably where he sets up Tenet as well. You know, this also disproves the theory that Neil's timeline is travelling in the opposite direction to the protagonist, like Professor Riversong in Doctor Who. Both characters in Tenet are travelling through time in the same direction. Neil's just been around longer than we realise.
Well, I've seen too much.
Number 2, the final battle doesn't happen in the way we see it. This is a minor point in the grand scheme of the film as a whole, but I know from personal experience that the soundtrack overpowers Ives' exposition of the battle, which is an issue we won't get into in this video. Basically, in the final battle where the protagonist, Neil, and Ives are attempting to retrieve the algorithm, both teams are shown on screen to be fighting simultaneously, and if you were actually on either team, you'd experience it in this way as well, because of how time works. But chronologically, Blue Team were an hour ahead of Red Team in the future. They went into battle first. They completed their mission in 10 minutes and ended up back at base camp where they reported what happened to Red Team. Red Team then went into battle with that knowledge. They had the benefit of Blue Team's experience, as Ives says in the briefing, and they were able to use that to their advantage.
What happened here?
Hasn't happened yet.
Number 3, Andre Sator was never going to use the algorithm. This is quite a confusing plot point in the film, and I'll happily admit, the first time I saw it, I got the wrong end of the stick as well, but let's clear things up right now. Andre Sator was never going to be the person who used the algorithm. He was effectively a caretaker. He collected all the parts of the algorithm sent back through time and chose to bury them in Stalask 12. When his fitness tracker registered his death, it would send a signal to the people in the future wanting to reverse time, and they would know to dig the algorithm up and use it. All the protagonist and Ives had to do in that final battle was remove the algorithm from the pit. If it was in the hole when the bomb went off, they would lose. If it wasn't, the future people would go to dig it up and find nothing, which is why Kat can kill Sator early with no issues. Lots of people, including me on my first watch, thought if Sator's fitness tracker registered his death, the algorithm would just explode there and then. That was never the plan, and that was never going to happen.
Try and keep up.
Number 4, the fake Goya painting is more important than you think. This is such an overlooked part of Tenet, and in fairness, it's something you really have to pay attention to in the first act of the film to really understand its importance. Multiple viewings definitely help, but basically, Kat explains to the protagonist over dinner that the fake Goya is a way for her husband Sator to control her, which is true. But there's something more crucial about it than that, because he keeps it locked away in the Oslo Freeport. And you might be thinking, so what? But think about it. Keeping it there gives him unquestioned access to the Freeport, and therefore the turnstile he had built right in the middle of it as well. The painting gives him unlimited access to invert himself. Now, we don't see the exact scope of this in the film, but I think it's more than fair to guess Sator was using that turnstile pretty frequently to get the upper hand over anyone who attempted to stop him getting all the parts of the algorithm.
How would you like to die?
Old.
You chose the wrong profession.
Number 5, Andre Sator was basically everywhere on the 14th. Now, one of the main takeaways you get from Tenet is that the 14th was an incredibly important date. It's when the opera at the start of the film takes place, it's when Sator and Kat are on their yacht in Vietnam, and it's when the explosion at Stalag 12 happens. I mean, you could argue that it's the date where the majority of the film is set. And the completely mind-blowing thing about it is it's the day that Andre Sator was basically everywhere. He was on his yacht with his wife Kat. After her and Max went ashore, Sator left in his helicopter and I think went to the opera to oversee his men securing a part of the algorithm. And if you think about it, Sator's exactly the kind of person who would definitely want to be there making sure everything went according to plan. Now, just look at his behaviour during the car chase scene where he asks to be told about everything that happened. But we're not done, because there's one more Sator in the timeline, and it's future Sator who inverted after the car chase and travelled back to his yacht on the 14th because he knew his past self left and it would be the perfect place for him to end his life and finish his plan. I would even put money on the fact that past Sator had already decided to end his life on his yacht and chose to leave for the opera so his future self had a safe place to die. So in one timeline, you have past Sator on his yacht arguing with his wife, past Sator at the opera after leaving his yacht, and future Sator back on his yacht after inverting to kill himself. I don't know about you, my head's seriously hurting right now.
Don't try to understand it. Feel it.
And there you go. 5 things people misunderstood about Tenet. We have gone very in-depth. If you're like me, you probably want to lie down after all that detail, but hopefully it helped you. Multiple viewings will 100% help you even more. It's like you uncover more detail and you have way more of those moments where you're like, oh, now I get it. And that happens every time you watch the film, and I can't wait to watch it again. Especially that plane crash, because just, oh wow.
You want to crash a plane? But not from the air. No, it's so dramatic. Well, how big a plane? That part is a little dramatic.
I'm going to watch that over and over now. Thanks very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, drop it a like down below. Share with your mates who walked out of Tenet confused as well, because they need it. And subscribe if you want to see more. My name's Matt, and I'll see you later.